Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we talk a lot about the home teams, as we always do. The New Orleans Pelicans, the New Orleans Saints. We have some time. We'll talk some college baseball. Great panel tonight to break it down. Jude Young of CrescentCitySports.com and WGSO 990 AM radio, along with Mike Fazende, who joins me each and every Friday on my radio show Inside New Orleans on Sports 1280. He is with me in the 12 to 1 o'clock hour. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us.
Pleasure. Always fun to be here.
Always like to start off letting folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. Jude, tell us a little bit about CrescentCitySports.com and, of course, your radio show over at 990.
Well, we try to cover everything from high school, college, and the pros, and everything in between if we can. And this weekend we'll have high school playoff baseball on Friday and Saturday. I'll be involved in some of the coverage of that. You can watch it live on CrescentCitySports.com. Of course, we're covering the Pelicans in the playoffs, Saints post-draft reactions and analysis, you name it. And my show, as Eric mentioned, Tuesday and Friday nights from 6 to 7 on 990 AM. And one more thing, happy birthday, Dad. Stop getting old. You're making me feel old.
Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, Pops.
Yeah, also the voice of the UNO Privateers. Absolutely. Mike Fazende,
yes,
welcome back to the show. I know you got a fantastic blog going on. Tell the folks about what's happening with you.
I do the blog. It's Fazende on Football. You can Google it, or you can go to mefootball1.blogspot.com. I'm on Twitter at Michael Fazende. I'm with this guy right here every Friday, 12 to 1. Make his life miserable. Hopefully not.
No,
but,
not at all.
And stay tuned. Could be a podcast starting up in the near future.
Oh, it's coming.
I'll let you know.
It's coming. All right, guys, let's get started. Obviously, the NFL draft. Normally, we start with the Pelicans. We're going to start with the draft. Saints bringing in a new crop of young players, but both undrafted free agents and guys that they felt would be a real fit for this team. I think you look at what they did, and this is a draft unlike the last two, in my opinion, where immediately the last two drafts, you could say plug and play. You could see the vision for each one of those players. And when you look at those two drafts, two fantastic drafts that catapulted them from 7 and 9 into a Super Bowl contender. I think this year is a draft that you really can't judge until we get 3 years down the line. There are some players that are going to be plug and play immediately, but there are going to be some players that are going to be either they're going to make it on via the practice squad, they're going to be backups, or they're going to play on special teams. I'll take you first. Jude, we'll get into some specifics about the players in a moment, but just your overall view of the draft itself.
Well, it's an interesting draft because it just goes to show you that no two drafts are the same when it comes to any team and any philosophy going into it. Last year, you come up with 4 starters and 4 picks, but you had 4 of the first 76 picks, including the trade-in for Alvin Kamara. This year, you're a contender as opposed to a 7 and 9 team, as Eric mentions, and you feel like it's more about depth, developmental players, and special teams outside of how bold they were in the opening round, where most people felt like maybe there were 15 true first-round picks, difference makers, elite talents, and the Saints sitting at 27 decided to be bold and say, Drew Brees isn't getting any younger. We are built to win right now, and we're going after a guy that's as talented as, not as polished as, but as talented as in Marcus Davenport, any defensive player in the draft. You look at his measurables, you look at his overall strength, speed, size, and you see Bradley Chubb, except at a smaller school and a little bit more raw. And the Saints needed somebody to be a difference maker in the pass rush. Sean Payton wasn't hiding it during the offseason. Every time he spoke publicly about needs and then pre-draft, we knew this was something that was important to the team, and it wasn't just re-signing an Alex Okafor off of an Achilles. So they make this bold move. It has to pay off, and it really has to pay off at least by December of this year with Davenport. He has to be a difference maker down the stretch, and they hope into the postseason to help this team get over the hump when they're playing the best in the league.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Mike, your thoughts on the overall on the draft?
Well, I thought it was a good draft, not a great draft. Last season's draft, the Saints are not going to, match that production. I mean, that's one of the best drafts in the history of the NFL. I mean, when you talk about all the starters they got out of it, and a couple of Pro Bowlers and defensive and offensive rookies of the year. But I love the move to go up and get Davenport. As Jude said, the Saints needed a defensive edge rusher. That's all everyone's been talking about. They need an edge rusher. Well, you weren't going to get that guy at 27. You weren't going to get a guy that can make a difference at 27, I think, in this draft. So they went up and they made, it was Sean Payton. I mean, it was a Sean Payton move. He goes up. Next year's number one, we'll worry about that next year. We got 2 5s, we'll give him a 5, one of them. But we want this guy. We think he can be the missing piece on defense. I mean, imagine if he is as billed, he and Cam Jordan as bookends. I mean, it'll be great. It'll be crazy. So they still need help in the middle of the defensive line. They didn't really address that in the draft. They signed a couple undrafted free agents. Hopefully the guys they have can keep developing. But I like that. I like that pick. I like Traquan Smith. I had a wide receiver in my mock going with the second pick, the third round. Long wide receiver, 6'1", 6'2", fast. He can play inside. He can play outside. He can block. He's got good soft hands. I like him. Rick Leonard I had in my mock draft, but it's a 7th round pick. That's kind of a throwaway pick that maybe the Saints can grab him so another team won't pick him up free agency. Great athlete. He was a defensive end in high school. I think Maryland defensive MVP in high school, 5A. He goes to Florida State as a DE. Doesn't work out. They moved to offense. And he started his senior year, and he did a really good job. So I think the 4th round's a reach for him, but he's a guy the Saints obviously had targeted. And maybe they felt like other teams were going to scoop him up before their next pick came around, so they went and pulled the trigger on him. And the defensive backs, I love Wisconsin players. I think they're well coached. I think they're ready for the NFL when they come in. I don't know much about the other DB from Boston College, but I do know about the offensive lineman they drafted from that school up in Baton Rouge that everyone seems to think, including me, the Saints had a problem with drafting LSU players. Smart kid, I think that's a 7th round steal. I give that pick an A because his ability he will come in and he will make the rotation, and he's gonna do well. He's very intelligent. He can be Unger's heir apparent, and like I say, he's a smart kid. He went to Brother Martin. It's not like he went to Jesuit or something.
We won't hold the Brother Martin thing against him. We won't hold the Jesuit thing against him. Jesuit grad, Brother Martin father over there.
I guess Gil Finnerty finally has company in Saints history.
Ouch, there you go. Guys, I go back to something Coach Rick Gailey talks about all the time. It's about the sweetener, okay? And who got the sweetener in the deal. And it's so true when you really look at deals. First of all, I don't have a problem with going up and getting Davenport. I really don't. I think again they targeted the guy. They knew for 2 weeks they were gonna pick him. They knew they were gonna do whatever they had to do to get him. They felt he was the missing piece. The number 1 pick for next year, the issue there was you didn't have a 2nd round pick this year.
Right.
So I mean, if you had a 2nd round pick, you probably would have given up your 1 and your 2 this year and been done with it. I would have liked to seen a pick coming back from Green Bay instead of sending that 5th round pick, but the Saints felt like they had to make that deal, and they made the deal. So, look, I agree with Peyton. You're looking at this 1st round pick next year being a late 1st round pick. I will say this year's first-round pick was much more valuable than maybe you thought it would be if you would have stayed put because, again, the run on quarterbacks. It pushed good players back to 27, as a lot of us thought it would. Now, again, players that maybe the Saints would not have targeted only if maybe a Davenport was off the board at that time. But look, they knew the player they wanted. They went out and got him. I trust Jeff Ireland to after the last couple of drafts, that he's going to be able to identify talent that's going to help this team. Now, when you get into Davenport himself, I hear a lot of the media members here in this town talking about 6 sacks would be a really good year for him. You know, I think that's a little bit low, and I'm going to say my expectations are much higher for him. And the reason why is it's the defensive line that he comes to. Cam Jordan's getting double-teamed every time he comes off the ball. Sheldon Rankins is going to get double-teamed, or he's going to at least get chipped by a second player. You've got, if Alex Okafor comes back and healthy, they'll probably move him inside on passing downs. Even if Davenport is a situational player, he will only go up against an offensive tackle, right tackle, maybe a tight end, or maybe a back, depending on what set that offense will be in. So based off what he was able to do just in college with just his raw ability to rush the passer, you got to believe that he's going to have a chance to be singled up every time he gets off the ball, and you got to believe that he's going to have the ability to put pressure, whether it's hurries or sacks, on the quarterback. So immediately, I think, as Mike mentioned, and I mentioned on Twitter as well, you're looking for the missing piece. That could be the missing piece to your defense, with the exception of that defensive tackle, which I really think they need in the middle in terms of stopping the run. They have not addressed that. Maybe they get that in the second wave of free agency, but you now have a player opposite Cam Jordan that can put pressure on the passer, and that's going to make every level of the defense better. Your thoughts?
And it goes across the board with every player that they drafted. You could see that the past couple of years, they're not only targeting talents that fit needs and fit the system, but they're targeting guys who have a history of having high character, and they're players who can learn pretty quickly. And they paid attention to Marcus Davenport. If you read a few of the articles, you see that there were questions asked, there were little seeds planted in Davenport's mind the first time that Saints brass met him, and Peyton in particular. The next time they came around, Davenport basically remembered what was discussed strategy-wise. So that was the type of feel they were trying to get for the players. How quickly can he learn, can he retain information before you can actually get down in the trenches and coach him? And it was interesting during Senior Bowl week that in practices, which are just as important, if not more, than the game, when you have pro coaches there preparing these players and having them compete, and then all the other teams represented watching. First couple of days, Davenport himself said, you know, I was thinking about impressing the scouts as opposed to just playing. Once the light switch went on and he just played ball on Thursday, he was dominant in practice, clearly very good, made big plays in the Senior Bowl itself. So that tells you the guy's talent will convert over to face against top competition. Brian O'Neill, tackle from Pittsburgh, second-round pick, embarrassed him a couple of times in the game. If he can do that and learn that quickly and compete against that level of competition, he can make a difference. As you mentioned, singled up because he'll be opposite Cam Jordan most of the time. Singled up in the NFL, he should be a difference maker at times and only improve as a rookie.
And I do agree with your thought or the comment you made about being there in December, because again, he's going to get better the more he plays. Mike, what can you add to Davenport?
No, I think you're right. I think 6 sacks is really low, considering the fact that teams would probably be running away from Jordan or trying to double up Cam Jordan. And, Jude mentioned the Senior Bowl. They started double teaming him. I saw a few clips where they were chipping and double teaming him because he was so disruptive. And you're right, he had his first couple of days were a little, not great. But as he got his footing and as he got comfortable, I mean, he was hard to block. I think 6 sacks is low. I'm looking for 8 minimum, 10. Yeah. But much,
or at least if that hurries it.
Not so much sacks, but disruption.
Disruptions. Yeah,
Let's get in the backfield, bat a few balls down, make the quarterback step up, and hopefully the middle of the defensive front, will get penetration. So the quarterback, he has nowhere to go. He can't run away from Jordan because he'll run a Davenport.
Yes.
Is there anybody on the defensive line right now other than Jordan that other teams had to scheme for? No. Now, we'll see if Sheldon Rankins takes that step or David Onyemata, but no, the answer is no. So if you have an individual physical specimen that you can get at 14, which is a couple spots lower comparatively to another draft, and you got a guy like Rankins, you're pretty excited about it because you know he physically measures up to some of the best defensive ends, edge rushers in football.
And remember, when you have to chip a defensive end, you are hesitating either the tight end or the running back's pattern getting out in the backfield. So you're affecting their passing game, even if it's just for 2 seconds, the amount of time it takes to chip and move. So, I mean, even if he's forcing teams to do that, he's going to be worth the selection, and it's going to be worth the move up. Totally supportive of that move. I think it was a great move, and the Saints are bold when it comes to stuff like that. I love that.
You can argue about the 5th round pick here and there. The fact that it was Miami's pick that you got for Stephon Anthony as opposed to your pick, which was 10 picks later. It is what it is. You felt like you had to make the deal. The fact that they were saying they're going to make the deal at 8 or 9, what would you have had to spend to get up to 8 or 9 at that point? So I'm just glad. And look, for me, I was watching NFL Network that night. The whole the round table was talking quarterback, Lamar Jackson, and I'm screaming at the television, it's not a quarterback. They're not going up to get Lamar Jackson. They could have stayed
trading up 14 spots to get Lamar Jackson.
I mean, Davenport was what you thought they would be going after. And then, look, I agree with both you guys. Throughout their tenure here in New Orleans, for the most part, you really could never believe anything Peyton or Loomis was saying because they throw smoke screens up. This year, they pretty much told you exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it.
Yeah, nobody believed them.
But nobody believed it because of
brilliant.
The misinformation they've had for years. So maybe now we start to take it a little bit serious.
Maybe you can be honest when you've thrown enough smoke screens out there because you remember the comments were, I don't think that there's anything close to a surefire franchise quarterback in this draft. But he did mention, Peyton, that I do like Lamar Jackson. But that didn't sound like I'm going to trade a future first-round pick. Right, exactly.
Yeah. And
smiles don't win games, last I checked.
They were trying to sell Lamar Jackson that whole night, and God love him. I hope he does great.
Me too.
I mean, he's a great guy. But I don't think he's an NFL quarterback.
He's got to work on his accuracy. And look, if he can get the right coach to help him with his fundamentals in his delivery, maybe again, because he's got the arm strength, he's got the athleticism, maybe one day he hones and gets that accuracy.
Here's what's tough. Josh Allen, the same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think guys, you can tweak mechanics, but when guys have serious consistency issues with their accuracy that come into the league, most of them don't figure that out. No. They can figure out how to make their reads faster, when to get rid of the ball, when to pull it down and protect it. But when you're talking about accuracy, you're talking about a project with how the guy throws the football, that's asking a lot. Cleveland figured out the most accurate quarterback in the draft was clearly Sam Bradford. He has the leadership skills. He did it at a high level, and that's why they took a 6-foot quarterback, because they don't have to teach him how to be a successful passer. If you're trying to teach somebody how to be a successful passer, you are taking a project in the first round. Saints weren't going to do that, and as you saw Lamar fall down to the bottom of the first round, other teams thought that was crazy too.
Right, and of course you got Baker Mayfield.
Oh, Mayfield. Well, I've said that several times, too, because of the Oklahoma connection. I did it on my show again.
We knew exactly what you meant. And look, the Patriots were willing to go up to get Mayfield at 2 is what we're hearing now. You can't tell me that Peyton didn't have a man crush on him. He liked him as well, but the cost was too high to go up and get a Mayfield. When they were talking about Mayfield at maybe 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, maybe that's palatable, but to have to go up to the first pick of the draft to get him, that's ridiculous at that point, the amount of capital you have to give to get that particular pick.
Lamar Jackson was a 54% completion rate with Bobby Petrino, one of the best quarterback coaches ever. I mean, he's got a lot of guys drafted. So, and Josh Allen, the same thing. He's got bust written all over him. Mike Mayock says he's great, except he has poor anticipation and accuracy. Well, what more do you need to be an NFL quarterback than anticipation, pre-snap reads, and
at a
accuracy?
non-Power 5 school, and really was poor against the Power 5 teams Wyoming played. I don't understand it. People are saying Buffalo had a great draft. It all hinges on Allen, and I don't think it's going to work out.
I'm just glad they stayed away from the quarterback position.
And I'm going to tell you, Baker Mayfield, he won't sit behind Tyrod Taylor. Why are they going to sit him behind Tyrod Taylor? They didn't win a game last season, okay? You're not going to the playoffs this year, Cleveland.
Saints fans just hope it's a couple of weeks looking at the schedule.
Well, I mean,
keep,
it's going to
keep
be
Mayfield on the pine just a little while.
They're slowly building talent in Cleveland.
No, they are.
It's like Tampa. I keep saying, watch out for one of these days. Tampa, they are going to grow up and become grown-ups, and they're going to be a force to deal with.
I'll go on record, not until Jameis Winston is gone. I think
I mean,
growing up means your leader has to be a grown-up, and I don't think he fits that profile, and that's what's holding them back.
They had a good draft, but I mean, you're right. It starts at the
They might be the most talented roster in the division.
Oh, I believe it could be. You know, one of the things that we also heard from Peyton in his post-draft press conference was one of the reasons why they went up, got Davenport, and they didn't go for the receiver. They truly believe that Breeze is going to play a few more years. You know, there were some out there were speculating, well, he'll play one more year, they'll get a quarterback. No, obviously he wants to play 2 or 3 more years, and they're rolling the dice on that now. That's why you give up the #1 pick next year, because you're trying to win a Super Bowl with Drew Brees. I agree with you. I love the 3rd-round pick, 91. They take Traquan Smith. I watched several UCF games. He's got great speed. He's got great range and catch radius. He catches the ball with his hands. He catches the ball in traffic. And he's also a guy that can block as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick. You said it all. I mean, he's fast. You know, and college receivers, when they get to the NFL, they have to learn how to get off the line of scrimmage. And with his long arms, he may be able to. It may expedite his progress in that. Or the Saints can bring him, put him in motion. They can do different things the way it won't. If it's a struggle at first, they can put him in, positions to succeed. But I love his production at Central Florida. I think it's a great pick. And, I don't know what to say about it, except that I wish the Saints would have taken his teammate, Shaquem Griffin in the next round. But, they passed on him.
They did. And a lot of that had to do, from what we understand, was, there was a bad clocking on his 40 at the combine, which caused him to drop. Okay, that was the explanation that was given by one of the national networks. Your thoughts on Smith?
Smith fits all the needs that you talk about. You want from a receiver in this offense, a team that's much more based on running the football 44% of the time last year. That may increase again this year. We'll see. But if I'm Brandon Coleman, I just re-signed to get another opportunity. I'm going to have to dig deep to find a little bit more than he's been able to give, and he's been at least a usable role player. I don't see how a healthy Smith, based on what he's done in college and what he's capable of, doesn't wind up taking Coleman's job at this point.
You don't pick a receiver 3rd round and to sit him for a year or 2.
I agree. Mike mentioned what he thought about Rick Leonard. What do you think about Rick Leonard out of Florida State? And going in the 4th round, where a lot of draft gurus had him going in the 7th round, maybe an undrafted free agent.
No, well, if Rick Leonard's agent is accurate, that a couple of teams were targeting him in the 5th round, it doesn't look like such a reach. And a little research showed that there was specific interest from the New England Patriots in Leonard during the pre-draft process. So they're seeing some things with Leonard.
Such a Patriot-type pick.
And there's a guy that you have to, it's all about projection, isn't it? How can this guy do if he has more than a couple of years to play the position? A guy who started as a defensive end, was good enough to be in the rotation out of Florida State, not Fresno State, not Ferris State, the Seminoles. And then they move him to the other side of the ball because Rick Trickett, a veteran, respected offensive line coach, wanted him the whole time, and he wound up being a part-time starter immediately and then a full-time starter the very next year. That tells you that this guy has the tools, other than the arms. That he doesn't have the arm length at 32 1/4 or whatever it is when they would like to see 34 or more. But other than that, he's an athlete that can play the position. They're looking at him as a swing tackle, and I think that they're going to keep receiving tight ends. The guy that if I were on the roster and looked at it and would be worried based on how they described the pick after taking it would be Human. I think, boy, my blocking tight end days might be over with the Saints, because I think they see Leonard in that role. Leonard, by the way, was a tight end in high school.
And if you remember, Peyton made a comment this week that he was going to use him a lot in jumbo packages as well.
Yeah, like they used Zach Street when he was first coming in, the rookie, first couple seasons.
Tackle
and he broke into the tackle eligible, and he broke into the starting rotation. They would rather have a tackle there than a tight end, because they want to run the ball.
Right. Natrell Jamerson and Kareem Moore, back-to-back picks in the 5th and 6th round, 164 and 189 respectively. Your thoughts, and then I'll throw it to Mike and he can give us his thoughts.
Talk about projection again. Peyton indicated they liked both players, and they took Jamerson first. 25 picks later, they were able to come up with more. And the thing is, they're projecting both players, I do believe, to play different roles than they played this past season as seniors on the college level. They want to see Jamerson, who had experience as a slot corner as a junior, be able to do that in the NFL first. If not, his fallback option is a free safety with elite speed.
Yes.
And then Moore is a guy who excelled playing off the ball. His numbers were through the roof. He had a brilliant senior year. He's not a playmaker on the ball that's come up with interceptions, but his ability to make breaks on the ball and deflect the ball away are what you're looking for as a guy who can be a hybrid in a passing league. He's going to be available to play in zones. I don't think they want him as a true slot corner, but they may see him as a guy who's more of a safety in a zone corner that will help them in certain weeks and certain matchups if he's as good translating as a rookie as he was at Boston College.
And Mike, both guys are going to play special teams, which is one of the things that Peyton talked about. Immediately they make an impact on special teams.
And Jameson can tackle. The kid from Wisconsin, he'll come up and lay the wood on you. That's why I was a little surprised, because all of his highlights were as a safety, and him coming up and laying wood on somebody, or really making a big hit. But he's quick, he's fast, he's a good ball hawk, he's a good playmaker, but he does have cornerback experience. And it wouldn't be bad, like Jude said, to put him at slot, see how he does, because you can always fall back. He reminds me of Raphael Bush back there. A fast, hard-hitting safety who's got good range.
Yeah.
And Moore, great point about an off-the-ball cornerback. You see a lot of him coming from off-screen, on-screen to deflect a pass or make an interception. What I liked about Parry Nickerson, he does that a lot.
Yes, he does.
And so that's a good pick.
Yeah.
And then I guess Boston Scott.
Why don't you talk about Boston Scott? Because a lot of people were curious about that pick. It is something the Saints don't really have right now.
It was an interesting pick, but you get it. I mean, he might have been their best player, at that time on the board. I know a lot of people say Darren Sproles tight, but he is. He's 5'6", he's 200, he can run between the tackles, he runs a 4.4, so he's got good speed, and he's got good startup, like good acceleration, which is key to a running back. If you're going to run between the tackles, you got to have great acceleration, and he does. He played at La Tech, so the colleges he played against were an SEC-type caliber, but they played the Alabamas and the Arkansas of the world, so I think that's a good pick, good solid pick. And return man, third down back. Alvin Kamara's the best down back in the league right now. But I mean, what happens if he gets nicked up or he gets a concussion, whatever.
Well, we saw it.
So yeah,
the Atlanta game on Thursday night. I think that was the moment where Sean Payton said, down the line, we need to come up with a backup plan.
Yeah.
He's not Alvin Kamara, but he is somebody who can catch the ball. Great ball security for a guy who's only 5'7". He can scoot and make that first guy miss, and then get up the field and make something happen. You don't have to junk your game plan if something happens to Kamara against one of the better defenses when you're playing a Minnesota or an Atlanta. So he makes a lot of sense. And not only does he have the ability, Scott, to return kicks, but Jamerson has a lot of experience in that area too. And having some competition there to make the return game much better than it's been and not have to use Kamara in that role would help this team long term.
I love the. I'm sorry, Michael.
I was I'm just thinking to myself, the Saints are building some great depth with this draft as well.
Which is what they had to do, because there weren't a lot of spots open.
They got a starter in Davenport. They got a full-time player in Smith. And then the depth after that, they're building a really good depth.
Yeah, I would agree. And let's go to Will Clapp, who, again, I absolutely love that pick. I thought he'd go in the 4th or 5th round. He drops to the 7th round. He played against SEC competition, the interior of the SEC lines, and again, he held his own. I think he only had one sack that he gave up in his entire career at LSU. One sack. He's cerebral. He's going to get bigger and stronger in an NFL weight room. And right now they can utilize him in the Clemente role, where he's a guard center, kind of going back and forth. And as Mike mentioned, as I mentioned on the radio show, I think 3 years from now, as Mac Unger gets ready to hang it up, he's your heir apparent at center.
Right. There's no guarantees for a 7th round pick. Even somebody somebody that's local and beloved, and many people feel is a steal in Will Clapp. But it'll be interesting to see if they can help him with his lower body strength. Everybody comments based on draft analysis that was a big deal for him, but it's not as big of a deal if you're a center. He's not going to be a center like a Max Unger because he's such a technician, but he will put in the hard work. And the Saints were willing to go over that so-called LSU hurdle because you talk about his dad, Tommy Clapp, and being a local known quantity as a total class act and leader on a football team. I don't know if he'll be that swing interior player. I don't know if they envisioned him based on the post-draft comments that he can play guard, but if he can be a true backup at center, that was another hole they had to fill. And he doesn't have to prove himself at all at guard early on because that's what Jermon Bushrod is envisioned to be the primary backup there, at least this season.
And I mean, listen, it reminds me of the position Brian De La Puente was in. Remember Brian De La Puente? We thought in preseason he's going to end up cut. They tried him at guard. He was lost. They put him at tackle between Nix and Jari Evans, and he played great. And I think Will Clapp can be in that same situation. The Saints are set at guard, and they even have Bushrod as a backup. And a center needs those two guys, especially a guy like Clapp who's not experienced enough. He needs those two guys he can rely on and count on. And I think that's what, I think De La Puente was in 2011, and the Saints had their best offense ever. When he was a center.
A career, and that's a great comparison, a career to track by comparison in this draft would be Mason Cole out of Michigan, who was versatile enough to be able to hold his own at left tackle in the Big Ten, but is basically supposed to be a center, and he's a fourth-round pick. I don't think he's going to be any better of a center than Will Clapp, who doesn't have that overall positional versatility, at least according to the scouts, that you get in the 7th round. That's an area where if you're mad about Rick Leonard, a lot of people have pointed out, let's say the Saints were the only team that thought he was draftable. I don't think that's true, but let's say it. If Will Clapp would have been the 4th-round pick and Leonard would have been the 7th-round pick, would anybody have had a word to say about it?
It would have been great.
Guys, I'm going to take a quick break.
Go ahead.
I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to think about the undrafted free agents that they've signed. And we'll throw out a couple that may have a chance to be able to make an impact on this team. Then we're going to switch to Pels. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Jude Young of CrestCitySports.com and 990 AM WGSO. Mike Fazende from Fazende on Football blog, and also Sports 1280 are our guests. We'll be right back.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or amcofencecompany.com.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Jude Young of CrestCitySports.com and Mike Fazende of Fazende on Football are our guests. Guys, I want to get the Pelicans, but we'd be remiss after how the Saints have done so well in undrafted free agency over the years, and some of that they had to because the drafts were so bad. But again, since Jeff Ireland has jumped on board, the drafts have been fantastic. Going to be a lot tougher for undrafted free agents to make this team this year. J.T. Barrett obviously is a kid that everybody's talking about at Ohio State, maybe coming in here and challenging for the 3rd quarterback position. I think that'll be interesting. Guys, throw some names out there, some players you think that may be able to stick with this team.
Well, there's one that stands out for everybody because we know how much of a bonus he got to pick the Saints, and that's Deion Yelder out of Western Kentucky as a tight end who was a 1-year wonder who had a coaching change give him an opportunity as a senior in a more tight end heavy offense to shine. Mike White being the quarterback, who was a mid-round pick and had a very good year as well. But Yelder was his main man, the leading receiver for that team. I think because he was a one-year wonder, 6'3" as opposed to 6'4", 6'5", but 250, shows a willingness to block. That's a perfect situation for him because the Saints did not address tight end in this draft. And clearly with a $90,000 bonus reportedly, Saints like him a lot. Now, a sleeper name that really stands out to me is Taylor Stallworth at another position the Saints didn't address, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. We'll see if the issue with his measurables winds up being a deal breaker for him as an NFL player. But when it comes to guys who are run stuffers, who just do the dirty work and take up blocks, sometimes guys outplay their measurables with intelligence and heart. And Stallworth is that type of personality. And again, you look at a lot of these guys that were undrafted free agents, most of them have that background. Total team player, team captain, no question about their work ethic. And I think Stallworth might be the guy who winds up shocking everybody and becoming that backup as a rundown tackle.
Mike?
I love Yeldon, and I think a guy, Maya Tuhima. He's a guy to watch.
Former Tiger.
We talked about Will Clapp and Leonard, but here's a guy, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of Texas in high school, signed with LSU, was starting on the, I guess, left tackle for LSU, and he was going to be starting tackle for LSU, played a lot his first couple of seasons, and then something happened, and he transferred to Southeastern when Ed Ogeron took over. So I think he's very talented. And he's a guy to watch. He could maybe break through and mess things up for other guys who might have been drafted. And then it was Mike Wozniak.
Nick Wozniak from
6 feet 10
power
inches.
forward. The Pelicans could use him tomorrow.
They need an enforcer.
Yes.
Bring him in.
Amen to that.
6'10", I guess 260, 270, tight end from Minnesota. One of my favorite college coaches, P.J. Fleck, Minnesota.
How about JT Barrett, guys?
Well, I think Barrett's somebody that's going to get every opportunity to try to stick around and be that fourth quarterback, practice squad quarterback, because his flashes at Ohio State, see, pretty much every Big Ten passing record, he has it. And when he's been good, he's been brilliant. Had great chemistry with Mike Thomas when he was a Buckeye, too, so that stands out as well. But here's a guy who hasn't been able to be consistent. But unlike these quarterbacks we talked about, like a Lamar Jackson, like a Josh Allen, who had 57% completion percentages, even though Barrett was somewhat inconsistent, 63, 64%. And he does have that mobility, which is an added bonus. That's a threat that defenses have to worry about. It's a really good signing, I think, because they decided, at first we heard he was being invited by the Colts to be a tryout. This is the type of guy you want to grab after the draft because he has the leadership skills and has flashes that you want to keep him around for a little while. And at the very least, he can be somebody that helps you at practice, scout team quarterback, when you're playing some mobile guys. Wouldn't shock me at all if he's on the practice squad this year.
No, not at all. Great leader, really good college quarterback. To me, every bit as good as Lamar Jackson. Not as fast, not as flashy, but I mean, plus 60%, you said, in the Big Ten. And I think the Ohio State connection got him here instead of the Colts. And so, I mean, you know, I'm going to love to see him play in preseason. I want to see what he can do.
Absolutely. Guys, let's shift to the Pelicans. 0-2 in the series against the world champions. 2 games in the Smoothie King Center. Friday night at 7 is Game 3. Game 4 is Sunday at 2:30. Game 1, an absolute blowout, 123-101. Game 2, much closer, 121-16. 2 different games. Pelicans blown out in the first game, not even in the game, weren't physical, were outplayed, were outshot. I mean, again, they want to blame it on the layoff. I didn't buy into that at all. They played a very good first quarter, and then they started turning the ball over, and then they started yapping with the officials. They didn't do what it took to be able to, again, take on and beat the world champs in their own house. Game 2, look, I've said it before on the radio show. I'll say it here again. If you've watched the NBA for the last 50 years, you know that the world champions get all the calls on their floor in the playoffs, especially in the early part of the playoffs. Now, you can get them to a best 2 out of 3, things will even up. But early, they're getting the benefit. Was it over the top? Absolutely. The Pelicans were robbed. But again, it's the NBA way. It's what it is. Yep. You can complain about it all you want. The only thing you can hope is that when they come back to New Orleans for these 2 games, that the officiating will even out and the Pelicans will start getting some of the calls that they deserve deserved in Oracle. With that said, they played a much more physical game in Game 2. They attacked the basket when didn't settle for three-point shots. We saw ball movement once again. I'm not worried about the pace. Everybody's talking about slowing the pace down.
No.
Man, run the ball. Run it, okay? But again, when you look at what they did in Game 2, that is the recipe for success to beat the Golden State Warriors in this series. They just didn't get any help from the officials. Now, we'll say this. Anthony Davis has got to be much more physical than he's been. He's got to realize that he's going to have two players on him at one time. He can't have Kevon Looney pushing him around, and he can't let Draymond Green continue to push him around as well. He's got to be more physical. You still need Mirotic to be able to spread the floor with his three-point shooting. If he can hit those long outside shots, I'm telling you, it opens up spacing inside. You've got to give AD the opportunity to be able to move around down there. And look, with take away some untimely turnovers. And Rondo has been fantastic. Also, again, Drew Holiday played in Game 2 like he should have played, attacking the basket. The problem is on the defensive end, how do you match up with again, the Golden State Warriors with so much height, so much size, and then the ability to shoot the ball from anywhere? You also got to get something out of that bench. And right now, whether it's Hill, Diallo, you're not getting anything from those guys. Even Ian Clark has disappeared here. So you really got Etuan Moore as your starting five. That's the only ones that are really putting up something. Hopefully that changes when you get into more familiar territory here in New Orleans. Your thoughts on Game 1, Game 2? Let's morph into Game 3 after Mike gets a chance to chat on that as well.
You really made a key point about the fact that the home court advantage does change things, the way the game is played, from the, you hope, officiating standpoint that you're going to get a fair shake, because certainly you covered it. Pelicans did not get a fair shake, particularly in Game 2, which was winnable because the game played out in a way the Pelicans gave themselves a chance. But on top of that, I think you're going to get more out of the bench in home games. That's just normally how it works. Darius Miller will probably wind up being more of a factor. You hope in Game 3 right away, coming off the bench and being able to be somebody who can spread the floor a little bit more than even what you have with your starters. You've got to have guys like that stand up. I thought that Ian Clark would be a more productive player because of his experience with the Warriors, having played with them, but he seems to be intimidated by them instead. That's got to change, and usually friendly surroundings will help there. But it's all going to come down to this. Anytime the Warriors shoot just 35% from three-point range, that gives you an opportunity to win, okay? But you can't, in the end, look and say, well, we didn't get the benefit of the calls, the officials are against us, they're playing in favor of the world champions, without changing what you're doing to try to change the view of the officials. Alvin Gentry got himself a technical foul and tried to be a factor in the game, but when it comes down to it, it's all about Anthony Davis. And that means early in the game against Draymond Green, let's match up Anthony Davis in the post and say, you've got to bully your way to the basket. You've got to force the whistle. And we'll just see if they'll continue to call fouls or no calls. First of all, we're going to force the whistle. And we're going to see if you're not going to get some superstar calls here, because Draymond Green's the fourth best player on their team, and he's a glue guy. Right. He's their Dennis Rodman. He's important. But you change the game when you change his ability to play it the way he wants to. I'm going to force those officials. I'm going to make sure that Anthony Davis gets the ball and bullies his way. He's got to be a bully. It's the playoffs. It's a different animal. I know you don't have Cousins there. Davis has to toughen up, and Gentry has to make that happen. That should already be a focus that's been discussed, and when they go into these games at home, they got to say, we're going to go at Draymond Green, because that changes things defensively and can open a lot of doors for everybody else.
Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they tried to post him up in Game 2. Green would not allow it. I mean, he's just stronger than him on the lower body, and he's forcing Anthony Davis to get into a spot he doesn't want to be in, not close enough with his back to the goal. And I'm not sure how Anthony Davis can get stronger between Game 2 and Game 3. It's going to be a problem unless the referees call that bodying foul. In New Orleans, they didn't call it. He was using his hands, his bodies, his hips, anything he could do to prevent Davis from getting to his spot.
Right. And what I want to ask, I mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to ask, so you're a star. So you're getting bumped like that. Look the official straight in the eye, holding it, and say, so that everybody sees that these officials are human beings. Right. At least at home, you're going to have 17,000 people howling in your favor, saying what's going on. You might get more of those whistles. And if you can do that and change things and get it to a best of three, you've got a shot. But Davis needs to be a superstar. And superstars can get that look with the official, one word, as somebody who doesn't complain that often. When he does, he should be able to make them count. This is about being a star in the NBA, and and it's not fair, but it's how it works out, and a lot of superstars have benefited from it before. It's his turn if he wants to step up and make that happen.
Right, Mike?
I would love to see that. I just don't know if that's in him. And you don't want him. You got to be careful with him to not, to be himself without trying to be too assertive, and it takes himself out of his own game. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, Mike, but I will say this. You cannot settle for outside shots if you're Anthony Davis.
I understand that.
Okay,
We all
and
understand
you got to
that.
play above the rim as well. And look, I understand that Golden State is pushing him and trying to keep him from going above the rim. They just didn't get the calls in Golden
didn't get the
State.
calls.
I think they'll get the calls in New Orleans.
I think they will in Game 3. But the Pelicans, they have to prove it to everybody, the referees,
true.
to Golden State, to everybody involved before they start getting calls like that. Golden State's won 2 out of the last 3 championships. I mean, they're
getting the champs calls.
They're getting champs calls, and the champs calls travel.
Yeah.
They'll get calls on the road, but I mean, listen. I mean, hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but the Pelicans are not winning this series. I mean, it's going to be tough.
But I don't think anybody thought they were.
But it's about learning and finding a way to
Yes.
beat this team and send a
Figure
message
out,
for the future that you
build
can
on
compete.
this series,
Right.
win a game or 2,
Right.
and then figure it out. I mean, they're not getting any younger in Oakland. I mean, they're still going to be great for the next couple of 3-4 seasons. But you grow using this series. You played the best team in the last generation, maybe. So use it to learn from, and play your butts off, man. Go for it and see what happens.
How about this? If Anthony Davis can't do it, let's see if Steph Curry can handle our 2 guards that bullied 2 very good guards from Portland in the first round. Let's see if he can
I
handle
wanna see
it.
him
I
going
want to see
back-
them challenge him each and every time, and that includes posting him up.
Yes.
And I want to see him going back to the trapping the ball up top at the head when they come across half court. Force them to do things that they're not comfortable with. And if they get it, they start hitting threes on you. Fine, that's Golden State. They're gonna hit. They're gonna hit threes. Look at Game 1. Steph Curry didn't even play, and they won by 20. Okay, because Klay Thompson was hitting his shot.
Right.
Kevin Durant started out cold in Game 2, but you saw him heat up in the fourth. You can't stop him.
And he will. He will.
You can't stop him.
But the aggressive play on the part of the Pelicans is what changed Game 1 to Game 2. Again, passing the basketball, making sure they had movement, not being stagnant, sending guys to the board. See, that's another part of this as well. I mean, look, you watch Golden State. They rebound as a team. Okay, even on these long shots, they're not just taking for granted that it's going to be bottom of the net. They got 2 or 3 guys going to the boards. The Pelicans, in a lot of cases, have given up the offensive boards in an effort to get back to stop the other team from scoring. And they got to change that mindset. They have to physically challenge them every time down the court, whether it's on the offensive, defensive end. And you can't settle for outside shots. You got to physically go to the hole and be able to make them stop you. Put them in a position where they foul you so you get to the line. Make it tough on the officials at home. And look, I'm going to say it right now. They cannot win the series, but I think they can win the next 2 games at home if they play like they did in Game 2. And again, they got to keep the turnovers down. Both teams' Achilles heel is turnovers. When you look at both teams, they don't play well when they turn the ball over. When you have live ball turnovers, you give Golden State the chance to get easy baskets. If you're going to turn it over, it's got to be a dead ball turnover.
And Rondo needs to play better because I think he had 7 of the
did.
16
And
turnovers. And
4 of those,
they were not trying to make something happen. They were sloppy, rookie-like
they were.
turnovers.
They were like 4 turnovers. Just you're going like, what happened there?
And if he's not your leader who's handling the ball properly for 48 minutes, there's no way you can compete with Golden State. His turnovers, 3 or 4 of them were hollow possessions that led to numbers the other way, or just dribbled it off his own foot out of bounds. Those type of things turn into points pretty much every time against his team, this type of team when you talk about the Warriors. So yeah, I think Rondo's going to play better. He's going to bounce back, and he's going to be tough. Hopefully he can lead the way. Maybe you get a guy like Okafor more minutes. Maybe Diallo, the veteran and the young guy, say play with reckless abandon. We're not worried about your fouls. Be physical. Knock some guys around a little bit. It's playoff
Okafor in,
basketball.
man. Let him knock people around.
I would
do
agree.
something.
Somebody's got to draw a line in the sand here.
Somebody's got to stand up.
Right.
And they can't take being bullied.
No, because they have been.
Draymond
They're
Green.
being bullied by a finesse team.
But Green. I mean,
Right.
come on, let's face it. He's getting in every one of their heads right now.
Well, there was one play where AI was going to the hole. Anthony Davis is trying to get over to block the shot, and literally Green is holding him.
Right.
I mean, and
Yeah.
I tweeted out, does the ref think that Anthony Davis's feet were nailed to the floor? I mean, literally, he could not even get up, couldn't even jump to try to block the shot. You knew he had a clear shot. AI's coming in, and you know he's going to try to block the shot. He couldn't even get there. That's the kind of stuff that I think changes when you get to New Orleans. If you stay aggressive, they were aggressive in Game 2. They weren't a passive team. They got to be aggressive. Mike, I agree with you. Somebody's got to go in there and they got to start playing some 80s basketball.
Right, and Shaq would say, young fella, give him a bow.
Right.
Start giving him a few elbows, because that's one area where everybody's got an elbow that if you get hit in the chest a couple of times, it might change your attitude, even a Draymond Green. That's about AD growing up and learning how to play playoff basketball. He's only played in 6 playoff games.
It's playoff basketball. You said it.
The guy that really needs to step up, that hasn't stepped up, and it looks like it's going to be the next albatross contract for this team is Solomon Hill.
Yeah.
I know that he's coming off a very severe injury, but you have been playing now for a few weeks. All you're asked to do at this point is defend KD, defend one of their big scorers. You were brought in here to be a defensive stopper. Look, offensively, he is putrid, but he can play defense. And he's not playing defense at the level he has played in the past. He needs to find among himself to be a physical player and to play good, strong, man-to-man defense, because that is one of the things they're lacking. Somebody that again can try to shut down one of their big five. Really, when you look at it, you're going to get good defense out of Drew Holiday, and you know you're going to get good defense out of Anthony Davis. You need something out of Solomon Hill, or he shouldn't be on the basketball court.
No question. If Hill can at least force KD to take a few contested shots that Durant doesn't want to take, then he's useless to you. I mean, there's no question about it, because he's not a reliable enough shooter right now to space the floor. He was finding that before the injury in his first year with the team. But this rustiness is clear, and it comes to a point where he's not going to play himself into shape if you're trying to beat the Warriors. That's not what this time of year is all about. He had a few games against Portland where things were going your way, and he struggled for the most part. Now you're playing the best team in the world. I think it's time to go to plan B, plan C, and that's where being at home, will Darius Miller feel more comfortable? Will Ian Clark suddenly show up and be some sort of a factor in the series?
You said something that stuck into my head. You said you think the Pelicans can win the 2 home games. I think that means that it's guaranteed Game 6.
Yes.
Back in New Orleans.
That's 2 out of 3 is a
playing with
toss-up.
house money.
Yeah.
If it gets to a Game 6, I mean, to me, I consider that a win, because I was thinking Warriors in 5.
A lot of people
maybe
were.
4. If it gets back to the Smoothie King Center, or the Blender, I guess they call it, for a Game 6, you know that crowd's going to be crazy. And if you win that game, make it to a game, you push the world champions to a Game 7.
Right.
That's a tremendous series,
And
man.
could you ask for anything more out of this team this year after losing Boogie Cousins?
That's a great series.
I mean, if you could get it to 6 games at that point,
yeah, that's what I'm
a great
saying.
thing.
If you win these 2 games, you're guaranteed a Game 6. To me, that's a great series.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you did a great job.
And again, playing the way they played in Game 2, with again just fair officiating at the home court, they should be able to win. They should be able to beat the
listen, what was
Warriors.
the disparity in free throws? Disparage.
Was it 66?
27
It was brutal over the 2
60
games.
over the 2,
Yeah,
66 to
about
22,
40,
something like that.
40.
This last game was ridiculous, like 27 to 9,
Yeah.
9 or
27
6.
to 9, yeah, something like that.
But both games were bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were both bad. But I mean, look, if you make, somebody was saying today, I mean, you lost by 5, and look at this disparity in free throws.
You're not going to get you back, because you're not going to
can't
have
get
Klay
it back,
Thompson shoot that badly.
Yeah, he's not going to keep playing
But you
like
can
that.
hope. Look, that's what you have to hope with this team. You got to hope that they're off a little bit. Okay,
Right.
that's what this is. Look, if they're on, I don't care how good you're playing. They are better than the Pelicans.
Right.
You go 1 through 11 on that team. Maybe the only place where the Pelicans are better is Anthony Davis.
Right.
Okay, even Drew Holiday when you match up. Okay, you're right down the line. I mean, come on. So you got to hope they're off a bit.
Right.
But if you play good defense, if you're aggressive, going to the rim, going to the boards, not settling for 3-point shots. I mean, if there's open 3-point shots, you take them, but you don't settle. Anthony Davis took a couple threes the other day, or again, mid-range jumpers. Man, take it to the hole on these guys, and then look, make the officials have to make the call. Right. Let's head to the phone lines. 866-3200 is the phone number. Toby is in Gretna. Toby, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, out of the Saints rookies, who you think would return punts and kicks? And I thank you.
Thank you. Punts and kicks right now, I would guess that Scott would be one of them, but also one of the safety from
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Jamerson
is also a guy that can return.
I think they're going to give Scott a shot and see what he can do. And that's a big. That was something missing from the Saints return game.
Right.
And I think they'll give him a shot.
It's important to note that Scott didn't do it. He did return kickoffs, but he doesn't have the extensive punt return experience that Jamerson has. And at the very least, Jamerson has a punt return for a touchdown to his credit in his college career, and he's shorthanded. So they want to have somebody back there who might be a bit of a threat, at the very least who's shorthanded, because I don't think Tommy Lee Lewis is going to wind up being on this roster.
Especially on punts.
Yeah, especially now with again, the addition of Smith. Guys, critique the coaching staff who did a great job in this series against Portland. I was a little bit upset with them, especially in game one. I got the timeouts, but again, if you're only calling timeouts and you don't adjust, all you're doing is giving the world champs a chance to be able to get some rest and get a breather. I thought that the adjustments in game two were a little bit more prevalent. I'd like to see that going forward. We threw bouquets at Finch and at Ehrman and rightly so at Gentry for the Portland series. They got to earn their money over the next few games here in this series.
It's important to note that there's a big difference in how you use your timeouts in the playoffs on the road versus at home. On the road, you're really oftentimes forced to use that as an underdog in order to stem the tide. Let's take 2.5 minutes here to get a breather and slow this juggernaut down. At home, you want to use those to be much more strategic. And for the Pelicans, buying rest for guys like Holiday and Davis who are going to play 40-plus minutes, and Rondo as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, they stepped up big time in competition. I mean, the coaching staff did a great job against Boston, had great defensive game plans, Portland, great defensive game plans. And, somebody once said, all the game plan and all the plans you have are great until you go to war.
Right.
And then it all changes it. And, then they got on the court with the Golden State Warriors. So, I just think they're playing a team that's extremely well built and talented, and I don't care what game plan they have, it's gonna be really tough, even if they execute it to perfection.
Yeah,
to beat
because they're that good. But guys, let me say
this. A great team.
And then now it's about sacrificing your body on those 50-50 balls, flying around and trying to win those little battles, because if it's a close game, those decide a lot of games.
Yeah, I would agree. Guys, look, let's face it. They're in the final 8. They're in the final 4 of their conference. Think about where this team was over the last couple seasons to see how far they've come. And this is without Boogie Cousins.
Right.
This is without Boogie Cousins. So if you're a basketball fan here in New Orleans, you got to like where this team is right now.
Yeah, and they're going to grow from this. Everybody that's part of the core that's going to come back. Drew Holiday has grown up this season, and even more so in the playoffs. The fact that we're saying playoff Drew is a positive is a very, very good thing for the future of this team, justifying his contract, the vision of Dell Demps, and fitting in with an Alvin Gentry who's not going anywhere either with his contract extended. And then there's Anthony Davis, who still has some growing to do. He's put up monster numbers, historic numbers in the playoffs coming into this series. He needs to adjust and play on that next level. That's what we're talking about. If he can learn and be better and more physical and find a way to be the elite player he's capable of being, that bodes well for the future, because he can't be anything less than great for this team to reach its fullest potential.
Yeah,
Mike, you have the final
they're
word.
still young. I mean, their three best players are in their mid-20s, mid to early 20s, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm including Cousins in that. So, who knows? I mean, they may get lucky in the draft. They'd have a draft pick second round. Maybe a free agent they can bring in, and continue to build on what they did this season. I think it's going to be a really good team to look for next season in the future.
Well, they definitely woken up the sports fans here in New Orleans by this run.
That's what we've always said, Aaron.
Right.
For basketball, you better win.
You got to win.
You got to win.
Let's face it; these are 2 big games at home. I know the fans will
they'll
turn out.
be there.
No doubt. Mike Fazende, Jude Young, thanks so much for being on our panel
Always
tonight.
fun, my man.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. We're on statewide Friday nights, 9 o'clock on Pelican Sports Television. If you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, you can catch those at ericasher.com. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2. The iHeartRadio app is a free download for your smartphone or tablet. I'm on weekdays, noon to 2. Check us out on the radio program as well. Special thanks to our guests tonight, Jude Young, and also to Mike Fazende. Also the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Trey Lopez, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Have a wonderful week.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com.